I'm not suggesting Queen Camilla lacks authority, but that Tiara isn't hers. It rightfully belongs to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, for the Christmas gala at Buckingham, you know?
The document required only one final signature, but the moment King Charles lowered his pen, something inside the monarchy shifted forever. This was not merely a transfer of diamonds and pearls. It was a public judgment disguised as royal administration, and declaration about trust, inheritance, and the woman now being positioned at the heart of the crown's future. And when Camilla learned whose name had replaced hers, the silence inside the palace became almost unbearable. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles read the final paragraph twice. Alone in his private study, he held the pen above a royal warrant, a formal order carrying the monarch's authority. The document removed the pearl tiara from Camilla's use and transferred its custodianship, ceremonial rights, and future inheritance to Catherine, Princess of Wales. The jewel represented rank, continuity, and the woman being prepared to stand beside the next king. The monarch finally signed, yet his fingers remained around the pen after the ink dried. He knew the warrant would reach beyond a locked cabinet. It ordered Catherine to wear the pearls at the next state banquet, an official dinner for visiting leaders and dignitaries. Camilla would sit only a few chairs away. A private reassignment would become a public statement about succession before the world. Camilla did not move when the sealed copy arrived. A senior aide placed it before her and stepped back. She found Catherine's name, lowered the page, and asked, "When did he decide I no longer represented its future?" The question carried more pain than anger. She had worn the tiara as proof that the institution had accepted her. Now that institution was removing it by command. The Queen read further and discovered the clause that made the decision absolute. Even if Catherine refused the piece, the pearls could never return to Camilla's private collection. Charles had not created a temporary arrangement. He had closed the path back. A jewelry curator arrived before sunset, carrying a velvet-lined transport case. Camilla followed him to the cabinet and watched as he lifted the tiara from its stand. She refused to turn away. When the lid closed, something in her expression hardened. Charles knew the removal would be seen as punishment, but the signature had not come from a quarrel over jewels. It followed a private incident serious enough to convince him that the pearls could no longer remain where they were. To understand why the king transformed a family treasure into an instrument of royal judgment, the people standing on either side of that signature must first be understood. For Charles, the tiara carried the burden of a marriage he had defended before the world. For Camilla, it represented acceptance after decades of scrutiny. For Catherine, it was something more dangerous, a symbol she had never requested, but could not refuse without appearing to reject the sovereign himself. Three people were now bound to one object, and each understood that the pearls were speaking more loudly than any palace statement ever could. Camilla had worn the pearl tiara at diplomatic dinners, state receptions, and formal gatherings where every gesture was judged. Over time, the piece became more than jewelry. It became proof that she had survived public hostility and secured her place beside Charles. The queen consort believed the crown had finally stopped treating her as temporary. Catherine understood the danger immediately. As the wife of the future king, she represented continuity, meaning the line of duty and succession that would carry the monarchy into its next reign. Yet she had spent years avoiding any appearance of rivalry with Camilla. Accepting the tiara could strengthen her position, while wounding the woman still standing beside the monarch. William found his wife holding the notification letter near the window. Catherine folded it once, then again, as though making it smaller might reduce its weight. "I do not want her humiliation to become my honor," she told him. The prince did not answer quickly. His calm expression revealed something unsettling. The decision had not surprised him. Charles had spoken with his son before Catherine was informed. The king believed the monarchy's future had to come first, but he also knew what the warrant would feel like to Camilla. She had stood beside him through ridicule, anger, and years of public rejection. Now he was asking her to accept a loss that would look, from the outside, like a verdict on her worth. Camilla's pain deepened when she reached the inheritance clause. She had believed the tiara might one day pass to her daughter or remain connected to her family. One sentence destroyed that private expectation. The pearls would move forward with Catherine, while Camilla's branch would be removed from their future entirely. After dinner, she confronted Charles alone. He reached across the table, but she moved her chair back before he could touch her hand. The small gesture created a distance neither of them knew how to cross. "Did Catherine ask for this?" she demanded. "No," Charles replied. Camilla waited for more. He gave her nothing. That silence became the wound. The answer lay not in Catherine's ambition, but in a ceremony 3 weeks earlier, when one private command turned a fragile royal balance into open conflict. Every royal rupture has a moment that appears insignificant, until history looks back and recognizes the fracture. In this case, it happened during preparations for the Commonwealth reception, behind closed doors and far from the waiting cameras. A jewelry case was opened. A direct instruction was given. Catherine remained silent. Camilla did not. By the time Charles entered the room, the dispute was no longer about pearls. It had become a struggle over who possessed the authority to define the monarchy's future. Catherine had been invited to review several pieces for an approaching overseas state visit. She expected a routine discussion about protocol and suitable jewelry. Instead, she found the pearl tiara already resting between Camilla and the royal jeweler. The Commonwealth reception was a formal gathering celebrating nations connected through the Commonwealth, and every detail carried political meaning. Whoever wore those pearls would not simply appear elegant. She would be presented as a central figure in the monarchy's next chapter. Camilla spoke before Catherine could ask why the piece had been selected. She instructed the jeweler to reserve it exclusively for her lifetime and remove the princess from its future ceremonial rotation, the official schedule deciding which royal could wear a historic jewel. Her tone remained controlled, but the message was unmistakable. "Certain pieces belong to the sovereign's wife," the queen consort said, "not the sovereign's heir." Catherine felt the insult immediately. Still, she refused to answer anger with anger. She closed the catalog, thanked the curator, and prepared to leave. That restraint unsettled Camilla more than a confrontation would have. Silence denied her the victory of forcing the younger woman into open rivalry. Charles arrived outside the room at the worst possible moment. He heard his wife order the archive amended permanently, meaning the official royal record would identify the tiara as hers alone. The king stopped before entering. Camilla had issued the command without consulting him, and the monarch understood at once that this was no longer a private preference. The jeweler finally resisted. He explained that no historic entry could be changed without a signed royal warrant, a formal written order carrying the sovereign's authority. Camilla answered that she would obtain one. Her confidence revealed the deeper assumption. Charles would approve whatever she placed before him. The door opened. Charles walked to the table, lifted the tiara from its case, and asked Catherine and the curator to leave. When they were alone, he placed the pearls between himself and Camilla. "You attempted to settle the succession through a jewelry ledger," he said. That evening, the king demanded a full inventory of every historic piece whose future status his wife had tried to influence. The list was longer than expected. When Charles finally placed that inventory before Camilla, the restrained disagreement erupted into the confrontation neither of them could avoid. The doors closed without aides, secretaries, or courtiers to soften what followed. Charles placed the proposed warrant on the table. Camilla saw Catherine's name before he spoke, and the expression on her face changed instantly from disbelief to fury, then to something far more painful. She did not ask whether the decision was final. She asked why the man who had once fought the institution for her was now using that institution to strip away the symbol she valued most. Charles had summoned her to his private library with the jewelry inventory already prepared. Beside it rested the unsigned transfer warrant, a formal order that would move the pearl tiara into Catherine's ceremonial custody. The king explained that historic jewels could not be controlled through personal preference. They belonged to the crown's continuity, meaning the line of duty and inheritance that carried the monarchy from one reign into the next. Camilla pushed the document back across the table. "You have not transferred a tiara," she said. "You have turned her into my replacement while I am still standing beside you." The words struck deeper than accusation. Charles reminded her that Catherine was not replacing her as his wife, nor erasing the years they had survived together. But he could not deny the harder truth. The princess represented the monarchy that would exist after his reign, while the pearls had become trapped inside a struggle over who controlled that future. Camilla rose, anger breaking through her restraint. She accused him of using duty as a shield, because he lacked the courage to admit that the palace had already begun moving beyond her. Charles answered with equal force. He told her that love could not grant private ownership over symbols that belonged to generations still to come. Raised voices carried into the corridor. William entered before either of them could stop him. Camilla looked at the prince, then back at Charles, and understood immediately. He already knew. The future king admitted that he had urged his father to clarify the ownership of every succession-linked jewel. Such pieces were connected to the next sovereign, and could not remain vulnerable to competing family claims. Yet he insisted that he had never demanded Camilla's removal from this particular tiara. She placed one hand on the closed case between them. "Then say it," the queen consort challenged. "Say those pearls belong more naturally to your wife." William did not flinch. "They belong to the crown." The answer ended the argument without easing the pain. Camilla withdrew her hand and looked at Charles with a coldness he had never seen from her before. "Sign it," she said, "but understand this. You will not only change our public roles, you will change our marriage." She left before he could answer. Yet the decision was no longer governed by marriage alone, because behind Charles stood a system already preparing to enforce the transfer with or without Camilla's acceptance. Royal power rarely arrives with raised voices. More often, it appears as a red folder placed at precisely the right position on a desk. By morning, the private quarrel had become an official process involving legal advisors, archivists, jewelers, and the future king. But at the center of that machinery remained one exhausted man. Charles understood that every procedural step made retreat more difficult, and every delay made the crown appear vulnerable to private influence. The advisors spoke with cold precision. Charles possessed the authority to redefine the tiara's ceremonial custodianship through a signed royal warrant, a formal order issued in the sovereign's name, as long as the piece remained inside the royal collection. That condition mattered because the pearls could be reassigned for public duty without becoming anyone's private property. The Palace Council went further. It recommended that major historic jewels be aligned with future constitutional roles rather than personal family branches. In plain terms, pieces tied to the crown should follow the women expected to represent the monarchy in the next reign. That argument strengthened Catherine's position, but it also made Camilla's removal feel brutally deliberate. Charles dismissed the room. Silence settled around him. The king removed his glasses, pressed his fingers against his eyes, and stared at the unsigned warrant. "Duty has begun to resemble punishment," he whispered. He was not only choosing between two women, he was deciding whether personal loyalty could ever be allowed to override royal continuity. Anne entered after her brother requested her presence. The Princess Royal studied the documents, then told him that protecting Camilla from pain could not mean leaving the monarchy's inheritance open to private control. She understood his grief, but she refused to soften the danger. Then Anne produced a second file. The pages showed attempted archive amendments connected to several historic pieces, not only the pearl tiara. Camilla had sought to reserve jewels for her own lifetime and restrict how they might pass into future ceremonial use. The pattern changed everything. Charles finally understood the real threat. If he approved one alteration, future royal assets could be treated like private rewards, divided by affection, resentment, or family pressure. The crown would no longer guide the inheritance. Personal influence would. Anne slid the pen toward him, but did not order him to sign. "Are you acting as her husband today?" she asked, "or as the sovereign?" Charles looked at the warrant for several seconds. "Both," he answered. "And that is the tragedy." He signed. Before the ink had fully dried, the royal jeweler received instructions to remove the tiara from Camilla's apartments before sunset. The warrant had settled the law, but nothing could prepare the family for the moment its consequences physically entered Camilla's private rooms. At 4:17 in the afternoon, the royal jeweler arrived carrying an empty transport case. No trumpets announced the transfer. No statement had yet reached the public. But inside Camilla's apartments, the removal felt more devastating than any headline. The tiara had occupied the same velvet shelf for years. When the cabinet doors opened, she stood perfectly still, knowing that after they closed again, the absence would become impossible to deny. The warrant allowed no delay. The pearls had to be catalogued, inspected, and transferred into a secure collection linked to Catherine's future ceremonial duties. A royal collection was not a private jewelry box, but an official group of historic pieces preserved for the monarchy's public role. That distinction now carried a cruel weight. Camilla had worn the tiara, guarded it, and attached memories to it. Yet the crown had never truly allowed it to belong to her. Staff moved quietly through the consequences. Jewelry schedules were rewritten. state banquet preparations changed. Insurance records, portrait plans, and security instructions were amended to name the Princess of Wales as the new custodian. Each correction looked small on paper, but together they erased Camilla's connection with ruthless efficiency. The Queen refused to leave while the curator worked. She watched the clasp examined and the pearls checked before the piece was lowered into the transport case. Her composure held until the jeweler read the updated catalog entry aloud, reserved for the ceremonial use of Catherine, Princess of Wales, and the future crown. Camilla turned away. It was the first sign that the words had broken through. At Kensington Palace, Catherine watched the sealed case being placed on a table. She did not touch it. William asked whether she wanted the room cleared, but his wife shook her head. "Possession does not feel like victory," she told him. "It feels like I have been handed the evidence of someone else's loss." Instead of thanking Charles, Catherine wrote directly to Camilla. She promised that the tiara would never be worn to diminish her service, her marriage, or the years she had stood beside the king. The message was private, deliberate, and free of palace language. Camilla read the letter alone. She folded it carefully and placed it beneath the empty velvet stand inside the cabinet. She did not answer, but she did not destroy it either. Then she wrote a second note. The first asked Charles for a final meeting without advisors, relatives, or officials. The next went to Catherine. Before facing her husband, Camilla wanted to see the woman who now held the pearls. Whether that meeting would bring reconciliation or one final act of defiance remained uncertain. The transfer had been imposed by royal authority, but its true meaning would be decided in a room where only two women and no institution could speak. There were no advisors in the room, no husbands to intervene, and no palace statement waiting to reshape their words. Catherine arrived first. Camilla entered moments later and closed the door herself. Between them stood the unopened tiara case, carrying years of comparison neither woman had created, but both had been forced to endure. What followed was not an argument over ownership. It was a reckoning between a queen fighting to preserve her place and a future queen terrified of inheriting it through humiliation. Camilla had chosen a small drawing room, away from the principal royal apartments. No aide was permitted to remain within hearing distance. The queen consort wanted no witness who could later soften, repeat, or reinterpret what was said. Catherine came carrying the sealed case herself. She placed it between them and made one fact clear. The pearls had not been worn, photographed, or privately examined. Camilla studied her before speaking. "Do you understand what it feels like," she asked, "to watch the monarchy celebrate the woman who will one day occupy your position?" The question carried years of resentment, but also fear. Catherine did not defend the warrant. She did not praise Charles or mention duty. Instead, the princess admitted that she had spent much of her royal life being compared with women who came before her. Every silence, dress, gesture, and decision had been measured against someone else's memory. "I will not make you endure that cruelty from me," she said. The honesty weakened the confrontation. Camilla had expected ambition hidden beneath courtesy. What she found was discomfort almost as deep as her own. Catherine pushed the case toward her. She offered to ask Charles to delay the tiara's first public appearance. If wearing it immediately would feel like deliberate humiliation, she would accept the political cost of waiting. Silence followed. Camilla placed her hand on the lid but did not pull it closer. At last, she shook her head. Preventing Catherine from wearing the pearls would not preserve her place, she admitted. It would only allow fear to become her final contribution to the tiara's history. The queen released the clasp. Together, they opened the case. Camilla examined the pearls, noticed one loose strand, and adjusted it carefully with her own hand. Then she looked directly at Catherine. "Wear them without apology," she said. "Anything less will make this uglier than it already is." The words did not erase the pain, but they changed its direction. For the first time, the transfer no longer felt like a weapon passed between two rivals. It became a burden they had chosen to carry without destroying one another. Yet private dignity would soon face a far harsher test. The state banquet was approaching, and every expression would be watched. The palace had reached a private peace, but the world was about to witness the transfer and decide for itself whether it represented cruelty, succession, or renewal. By sunset, the warrant was no longer a palace secret. Broadcasters interrupted scheduled programming, newspaper editors remade their front pages, and crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace beneath a cold evening sky. But the true test came hours later, when Catherine entered the state banquet wearing the pearl tiara for the first time. Every camera turned toward her. Then the room searched for Camilla, and found the queen consort watching from only a few steps away. Buckingham Palace had released a short statement confirming that Charles had reassigned the tiara's ceremonial custodianship to Catherine as part of long-term succession planning. Ceremonial custodianship meant the official right to wear and safeguard a royal piece for public duties. The wording sounded controlled, but its meaning was unmistakable. The pearls now belonged to the monarchy's next chapter. Catherine felt that weight before the banquet began. She asked William whether the tiara appeared too triumphant, as though its brilliance might turn Camilla's loss into a public celebration. The prince answered carefully. "Humility will be decided by how you carry it," he said, "not by whether you hide it." The future king remained beside her as they prepared to enter. Across the palace, Charles arrived with Camilla at his side. Their order mattered. It showed that the warrant had changed the jewelry's future, not the queen consort's present place beside her husband. Camilla heard staff whispering outside the ballroom. She was offered another entrance, one that would allow her to avoid the first exchange with Catherine. She refused. The queen would not behave like a woman who had been driven from her own position. She entered beside the king, composed but painfully aware that every glance would be examined. The tension reached its peak when Catherine approached them. Cameras focused on the three figures, waiting for coldness, avoidance, or a gesture sharp enough to confirm that the family had fractured. Camilla looked at the pearls. Then she looked at Catherine. "They are exactly where they must be," she said, clearly enough for the nearest guests to hear. The sentence broke the tension. Catherine lowered her voice and thanked her, while Charles watched the exchange with relief he could not hide. Publicly, the queen consort had transformed surrender into dignity. The following morning, the Crown Chronicle published a front page showing Camilla touching Catherine's arm beneath the headline, "The Pearls Pass but the Family Stands." Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd applauded when the image appeared on a broadcaster's large screen. The nation saw unity, yet Charles knew the photograph could not reveal the private cost. With the public verdict forming beyond the palace gates, the king returned to the woman beside him and confronted the final personal consequence of his decision. The tiara had changed hands, but the final verdict was not written in the warrant. It appeared later, after the banquet ended and the palace corridors emptied. Charles found Camilla removing her earrings, tired but calm. The king had defended the monarchy's future, yet he feared he had damaged the person who had shared his hardest years. What she said next gave the transfer its final meaning and allowed the family to move forward. Charles paused near the doorway, unsure whether he was entering as a husband seeking forgiveness or a monarch defending a decision. The royal warrant, a formal order carrying the sovereign's authority, remained in force. Catherine now held ceremonial custodianship of the tiara, meaning the right to wear and safeguard it for official duties, with its future tied to the next reign. Camilla did not ask him to reverse it. She asked why he had allowed the dispute to become public punishment before confronting her privately. Charles admitted that he had failed her. He regretted the humiliation and the machinery that entered her rooms. But he did not regret the principle beneath the decision. The crown could not allow succession-linked jewels to be inherited through personal loyalty. If affection decided ownership, every future reign would begin with old grudges disguised as tradition. Charles had drawn a painful line because the monarchy had to outlive them both. Camilla finally spoke honestly. Losing the pearls had exposed her fear of becoming irrelevant. She had mistaken possession for permanence. Yet she understood that protecting her pride could not confuse the crown's future. The next morning, Catherine sent the official banquet photograph. It showed both women together, not the princess alone. On the back, she had written, "No jewel can erase the service of the woman who wore it before me." Camilla read the words twice. Then she placed the photograph inside the cabinet where the tiara had rested. The empty shelf no longer represented defeat. It proved that she had allowed the symbol to move forward without destroying the family around it. Charles entered and saw the photograph. He offered his hand. This time, Camilla took it. Neither mentioned the warrant again because nothing remained unresolved. The transfer had not been Catherine's triumph over Camilla, nor Charles's punishment of his wife. It declared that duty must survive fear. Catherine inherited the pearls. Camilla preserved her dignity. And the king proved that love could not exempt him from responsibility. The pearl tiara passed to the future, But the greater inheritance was the lesson left behind. The monarchy survives not when its members cling to symbols, but when they release them with grace. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.